Hello everyone, my name is Sean Hendricks, and today I just wanted to put together a quick video to solve a problem I've heard from a lot of people recently. It comes up seemingly in waves, which is how to render extremely large images. Now when I say an extremely large image, I'm talking, 6K, 8K, 10K, stuff that's for posters, billboards, those types of things. And obviously rendering those can take a huge amount of RAM, and a lot of people don't have the amount of memory required to really handle that. So everyone ends up with, software crashing, things going wrong, renders failing, and really it all just comes down to not enough memory. So what we're going to do is look at one way to solve this problem, and now I'm assuming you've already done everything you can to optimize your render in your settings for whatever renderer you're using, because of course those optimizations can be different from renderer to renderer. So I'm assuming you've gone through that. Chances are you've already tried increasing your swap file space, which will work as well in many cases. Problem with this, though, of course, is if you're using primarily your swap file space to do your rendering, then your render is going to be very slow because you're not swapping inside of a fast, high-speed RAM, you're swapping at hard drive speeds. Well, that can be an answer for some cases. In other cases, it may not be the most appealing answer. So the reason I'm going to look at this is the way that we're going to do this is through network rendering. And so many people only have one machine, they've never really thought to use network rendering as a method to deal with this problem. So we're going to use the Backburner network render system that comes for free with 3ds Max, and we're going to set it all up on just my machine. So it's not actually set up as a network rendering farm, it's just set up on a single machine. So to do that, first, for those of you who've never set up network rendering, I'm just going to show you how quick and easy it is to get Backburner up and running on a single machine. So I'm assuming you've had Backburner installed when you installed 3ds Max. If I minimize my window here, you can see that I've got the 32-bit version, 64-bit version of Max. In this, I absolutely hope if you're dealing with large images, you're using the 64-bit version of Max so you can address as much RAM as possible. So now we're going to launch network rendering. So the first thing to launch is the manager, and this is what controls the overall network render. Manager will sit on one of your machines on the network and actually dole out the frames and the renders to various computers. So with that turned on, when the first time you launch this, you're going to get this general settings window. And there shouldn't really be anything you have to set in here. This is the communication ports, maximum number of projects that can be assigned, all those. For what we're doing here, you can just leave this as it is, just say OK and move on. So I'll just minimize that. And then you have the server. Now this is the software that is on every machine that's going to be on the network. This is, as I like to think of it, serving the frames. So when you launch this, again, the first thing you're going to get is general settings. It'll automatically pick the name of the computer it's sitting on, most likely. Just turn on automatic search and you should be good. Really nothing needs to be changed here again because you're doing this all on one machine. If your manager is on another machine, then you just type in the name of that manager's computer and it'll go and find it. So we say OK to that. And now at this point I can minimize that as well. And the last thing in network management is the queue monitor. So this will actually monitor the jobs that are going on your network render. So I can just click on the little connect button. It'll currently connect to localhost, which is my current computer, which is perfect for this use. So I just say OK. And here you can see there's the computer that I'm currently using for my network management. So we can minimize all of that now. We'll go back into 3ds Max. And for this particular render, I'm using iRay. This could just as easily be Mental Ray or something else. What you want to do is just turn on network render in your render output. When you click render, you're going to get this job assignment dialog box. And the control we specifically want is split scan lines. What this will do is allow us to define strips of your render that will get sent off as individual jobs. So instead of sending the entire frame, it'll just do a strip. And depending on how much memory you need to conserve, you can make the strips very tiny. In this case, I've set it to a percentage, 34% of the height of the image. I could just as easily go through and say make it 10% of the height of the image, and now I'll get an average of 9 strips coming out of it. And I can also set an overlap between those strips, so there's a bit of play between them. This will just allow for any idiosyncrasies between the images that are being calculated. Shouldn't really be a problem, but it's there, and you can increase it as much as you want if there is. So I just left it as a 5% overlap between the strips. You can also have it delete the temporary images on completion. I'm just going to have it leave those so you can see what we're ultimately going to get. Once you've done that, you say OK. I can go in now and connect to my network. So now it's gone through and it's found the machine that I want to work with. And simply say submit. And now it's saving a scene off to a special folder. In this particular case, I've included all the maps just in case. So it's actually bundling all the texture maps that are used with this into one location, so we know the network render will go off without any hitches. And once it's done, it just pops you back to 3ds Max. And now I can continue working because I've basically sent it off to a queue. But what's nice now is if I minimize this, pull up my queue manager, you can see I now have 2 jobs in my queue manager. The first one is the 9 different strips that are going to get rendered, and they're all going to go one after the other to this same machine. And then the last one is a pass where it takes all the strips and puts them all together for me into a finished image, and we're ready to go. So we could sit here and wait for all this rendering to happen, but while it's doing its calculation, what I'll do is I'm just going to pull up an image, and you can see here we actually have the 3 different strips that I did previously. I did a 3-strip pass, and those are all there, and then I can click on and quickly show you the final pass, and let's just kind of zoom out a little bit. There we go. So this was a final render pass out of iRay. I didn't take it too far, so you can see there's a little bit of grain left. But basically the difference, just doing the 3 strips meant instead of using 6 gig of RAM in this particular case, I ended up using about 4.5 gig of RAM. So it saved me 1.5 gig of RAM on the renders. So again, it will definitely save you memory, and the more you break down the strips, the more likely you'll save up some RAM. So there's really a lot of benefit to doing this. And of course, if you actually have multiple computers, you can actually have each of the computers doing one of these strips. So not only will it save you on RAM, but it'll also get your image done that much faster. A couple mental notes. If you're using Mental Ray, you're going to want to make sure that you pre-calculate things like your final gather and photon maps so that you have one set of maps for that final gather and photons for each of the render strips that happens. You don't want to have the photon maps different from each one strip to the other. It can cause differences in the images, obviously. So that was just a quick tip on rendering out massive frames. Hope it works out for you, and I'll talk to you later.